Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone. Big news night tonight. RFK Jr. firing a 17-member panel on the Center for Disease Control, CDC, all related to vaccines. The LA riots continue as the Marines arrive. More chaos in the streets there. Making America chaotic again. Trump giving an address, preparing for his big military parade on his birthday. The Auditor General's report in Canada on that controversial Arrive Can app. We'll tell you what was said there and what has been revealed. Also, what else do we have? Oh, well, it's the story that just won't go away. The ostriches. Yeah, we'll have more on that tonight, too. Later. It's okay. If you're ostriched out the way I am, I understand. But every day, new revelations, new things coming to the surface. I've got more. And I just can't ignore it. Because every time I try to turn my head the other way or stick my head in the sand, the story keeps coming along and slapping me in the face. I've got no choice. I've got to share it with you tonight. And David Dixon will be joining us later in the broadcast with all new information. It's going to make your head spin. So get it out of the sand, because we're going to share information that will get you closer to the truth right after this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are Maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's just do just before we even get in. Well, how should I start? Things are changing moment to moment, right? So let's just start with with what's going on with these Marines arriving in Los Angeles. Yeah, we're going to give you the information unfiltered tonight as much as we can. Major developments in Los Angeles. This is really demanding our attention. Let's dive right into this. So, approximately 700 Marines from the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division, based out of 29 Palms, California, have arrived in Los Angeles. This deployment, ordered by President Trump, comes as tensions in the city escalate for a 5th straight day, driven by protests against aggressive immigration enforcement operations led by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. According to U.S. Northern Command, these Marines are tasked with protecting federal property and personnel, including ICE agents in the greater Los Angeles area. They join roughly 4,000 National Guard troops already on the ground, with an additional 2,000 guardsmen activated just yesterday. That's right. There are now more U.S. troops deployed in L.A. than in Iraq and Syria combined, with 4,800 personnel in the city compared to 2,500 in Iraq and 1,500 in Syria. What does this say about the state of America today? You can assess for yourself and make your own determination. Some people say this is unprecedented. I would say in terms of scale and the way this is being done, yes, I would agree with that. Let's do a little Twitter scroll just to give you a sense of what's going on, not just on social media, but in the real world as well. Let's just bring this up. Here we go. This is on X tonight, live feeds. This is channel 7. This is not WABC. This is channel 7 feed, Chopper 7.
You see uniformed officers ready to move in just in case these people get too close. But again, a dispersal order was given after a successfully peaceful protest in front of the detention center. Right now, LAPD's primary focus is keeping all of these protesters away from the National Guard. Reporting that you see uniformed officers.
Let's just scroll down, see what else we have.
Kids. So they went to the ground, I went to the ground. I got mad that he pushed children to the ground. I jumped up and yelled in his face. And the cop behind, he didn't even
Somebody's been shot with some rubber bullets.
Yeah, they were pressing this way. They're from right now, like 20 minutes ago.
Scroll down. Okay. Mounted units. LA, this is, what's this say? LAPD shoots New York Post photographer in the head during anti-ICE riots. LAPD shot New York photographer Toby Canham in the head with a rubber bullet during anti-ICE riots Sunday.
Just got shot in the head.
And you can see where the shot came from. Man in black truck spotted dropping off bionic face shields that were quickly taken by protesters. This is a post by Colin Rugg. It says, quote, "It just feels like something is about to happen."
Almost behind you and perhaps
describe where it just feels like something's going to happen and you're waiting for it to happen.
Let us clarify, because we've been showing a wide shot and from a different angle, a whole lot of officers on the other side of the federal building.
Okay. And, what does CNN have to say about
denied the state of California's request to stop Trump from using the California National Guard to keep the peace and keep order during these protests. CNN's Elena Treen is at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where President Trump is speaking. And Elena, that's a big development, the judge denying California's request. Tell us about that, and tell us what the president has been saying in his Fort Bragg speech.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge deal for the president here and his administration. And we heard just moments ago.
Denied the state of California's request.
Not much of a clip. This was 20 hours ago. Let me see if I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I think I've got a live feed, so let me pull this down. We'll take a very short break. We'll come back, and I think I've got a, holy crap. Did you see that? Okay, let's just see if we can get that live feed. I'll be right back.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV,
the entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, we're going to bring up the Fox News live feed.
Bypassed a state governor. Normally and historically how this all goes is a state governor will request the president to federalize their respective state's National Guard. That did not happen in this case. And that is why, historically speaking, a lot of people are fixating on that very fact. So in the meantime, that's overhead. Let's go down on the ground. Take a look at this. More people being arrested there. Presumably, a lot of these individuals who did storm the 101. And you can see there, law enforcement in position to prevent that from happening again. It's almost 4:30 here on a Tuesday afternoon. Rush hour will soon get into full swing if it isn't already. But traffic does seem to be going, at least on the other side. All right, let's move on from that scene. Yet another scene to show you. Take a look at this. So you can see more of kind of a conglomeration of these law enforcement officials gathered together there. This is a different vantage point. You also see a lot of those kind of plastic ties there they have at the ready to arrest people who don't comply with their dispersal orders. Oh, and look, they are even taking some of these signs that people have brought to the protest, and they're discarding them. You also see some American flags there. You see a lot of water bottles. It is June. It is Los Angeles. It's hot. And so, California Highway Patrol there on the scene. So we still have our other vantage point in the air. Take a look at this. You can get a sense, and that's the federal building right there. Kind of yet another smaller smattering of protesters. You see the Bearcat there. So it looks like this group of protesters, and many of those are members of the media as well. They're not protesters, but they're covering this story. They're down on the ground. Obviously, some of this group of demonstrators did not decide to impede traffic on the 101. They stayed where they have been, frankly, for the remainder of the afternoon. So you can see more of these federal vehicles moving through. You see that Bearcat as well. So it looks like some of these law enforcement officials, they have kind of stationed under the overpass there on the side of the freeway. Traffic getting back up and running. You see so many of them as well, kind of on that divider boulevard there on the 101. And then on this side street there as well, police line to prevent them from taking over the 101 yet again here. So if you're just joining us, we're approaching the bottom of the hour. Let's go back, if we can, to Friday afternoon. Reports of ICE raids in and around Los Angeles, so much so many of these activists and demonstrators and protesters, they wanted to stymie and thwart those very operations. And that is how this all precipitated. And now we're on night 5 of these actions here.
Okay, and so what we're seeing is the protests centered around downtown areas like the Edward R. Roybal Federal Building and the Metropolitan Detention Center have turned violent at times. Reports confirm clashes between demonstrators and law enforcement, with vehicles, including Waymo self-driving taxis, set on fire, as we've shown you, stores looted, a lot of people arrested as a result of that, and objects thrown at police and National Guard units. Just last night, police declared an unlawful assembly in Little Tokyo after protesters threw bottles and fired fireworks at officers who responded with pepper balls and stun grenades. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has pushed back hard against the military presence, stating that the unrest is confined to a few downtown blocks and even floating the idea of a curfew. There was a press conference earlier today and where she called LA a city of immigrants and insisted things were peaceful before federal immigration sweeps began late last week. California Governor Gavin Newsom has gone further, labeling the deployment of Marines deranged and filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration to block the use of federal troops for law enforcement. A federal judge today denied Newsom's request for an immediate restraining order, meaning the Marines and National Guard are staying for now. President Trump, speaking at Fort Bragg earlier today to mark the Army's 250th birthday, doubled down on his response. He claimed without evidence that the paid insurrectionists and criminal invaders are seizing Los Angeles, vowing that protesters would be hit harder than ever. We see these accusations of paid protesters from both sides all the time, and I think sometimes there's truth to that, sometimes not. Trump is also hinting at invoking the Insurrection Act, which would allow the military to take a more direct role in quelling the unrest, a move that's sparked alarm among critics like California Senator Adam Schiff, who warns this could be an authoritarian blueprint for the rest of the country. And indeed, we are seeing these protests spread now nationwide. Let's go to Fort Bragg. Where just a short time ago, Trump was delivering an address where he was talking not only about this, but also his upcoming parade. Let me just hear what the audio is here. What's going on here?
And located in downtown Los Angeles. About the same time last night, kind of a competing protest was taking place not too far away in Santa Ana. But the kind of locus of the protests has stayed and centered there in downtown.
Okay.
So in the meantime, no word yet on whether or not we'll hear from more Los Angeles officials, including LAPD Chief McDonnell or Mayor Karen Bass. We heard from them earlier this morning. We also heard from Mayor Bass saying she was going to kind of attend one of these vigils in the area in honor of some of these illegal immigrants, their families, and in her words, the fear that they have been put under due to these ICE raids. She has called on ICE to stop the raids. You've heard from her over the last couple of days saying if ICE had not done these raids, none of this would be transpiring.
Okay, and let's go to Fort Bragg for Trump's remarks, where he's also talking about the upcoming military parade. Just days.
Great place. Great
There we go.
I want to thank so many incredible soldiers and paratroopers, pilots, warriors for that awesome display of pure, unrivaled American military might. I just saw something that was crazy. You don't want to mess. I've been saying a long time, we have the best. Nobody even comes close, but they just gave me a display that you might be lucky not to see it because it's a little scary. It was beautiful to watch. Let's hear it for the Army Special Operations and Command and the 82nd Airborne Division and the 18th Airborne Corps. What a show it was and what a show it continues to be. And Saturday is going to be a big day in Washington, D.C. You know, a lot of people said, we don't want to do that. I say, yeah, we do. We want to show off a little bit. You know, recently, other countries celebrated the victory of World War I. France was celebrating, really. They were all celebrating. The only one that doesn't celebrate is the USA, and we're the ones that won the war. Without us, you'd all be speaking German right now. Maybe a little Japanese thrown in. But we won the war. And we don't celebrate, but we're going to celebrate on Saturday, and we're going to celebrate from now on. We're going to celebrate our greatness and our achievements. This week we honor 250 years of valor and glory and triumph by the greatest fighting force ever to walk the face of the earth, the United States Army. For 2.5 centuries, our soldiers have marched into the raging fires of battle and obliterated America's enemies. There's never been anything like it. There's never been a force like this. And I rebuilt it. I gave you so much money for 4 years. It was crazy. And we just approved our largest budget for military operations, over $1 trillion. We've never even come close. But our army has smashed foreign empires, humbled kings, toppled tyrants, and hunted terrorist savages through the very gates of hell. Our soldiers do not rest until they win. You know that better than anybody. From June 1775 to June 2025, those foolish enough to challenge America's army have been met with unyielding strength, unbreakable spirit, and unstoppable, overwhelming force. Time and again, our enemies have learned that if you dare to threaten the American people, American soldier will chase you down, crush you, and cast you into oblivion. That's what happens, unfortunately. That's what happens. Doesn't sound very nice, but it's true, isn't it? The last sound you ever hear will be the dueling howl of Black Hawks in the dead of night, the thunderous boom of artillery fire, or the ferocious roar of a U.S. Army infantry brigade charging over the horizon. That brigade is going to charge like you've never seen before, and hopefully I can keep you out of that, but if I don't, you're ready. Is that right? If I can keep you out of it. If I keep you out of it, that's okay, but if we need it, you're ready. You know, it's called peace through strength, isn't it? Peace through strength. For our adversaries, there's no greater fear than the United States Army. They all fear us, and we have the greatest force anywhere on earth. You know, you read different stories that others are building and building and building. We have a force like no other. They said it would take 5 years to defeat ISIS. We did it in 4 weeks. 4 weeks. We let them go. Unlike other of your leaders, I let them go. And we had General Raisin Kane, who's now the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because I liked him. He was a warrior. He was a great warrior. And now he's been rewarded for his incredible work. But they said it would take 5 years. We did it in 4 weeks. Someday I'm going to ask him to explain that one to me. But it was the television generals that said that. The real generals got out and fought, and nobody fought like them ever. But for the American people, there's no greater pride, because you are the righteous sword of American justice and the ultimate shield of American freedom. This week we remember that we only have a country because we first had an army. The army was first. In fact, the army was even before the country. You know that, right? 1 year before the country. After 250 years, we still proudly declare that we are free because you are strong. You are so strong. We're safe because you are brave, and America's flag will never fall because America's army will never, ever fail. Never going to fail. Every branch of the armed forces has played a critical role in protecting our nation, but no one has done more fighting, bleeding, and winning than the U.S. Army. Nobody's done that.
Interesting. Pretty tough talk from Taco.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Canada took a different path. It's one of the things that really sets us apart from the United States. Our army didn't come first. We have a country not because we bled and died, but because we learned that we could cooperate and find ways to live together. Big difference. Yeah, we're a real country. What a difference it is around here. I went for a walk today. I didn't get beat up. I didn't get shot. In my neighborhood, it was pretty peaceful. Went downtown. Everything was calm. Not so in LA. Here's a lady who had something to say about that.
You know, I live in LA, so I decided to go downtown today and talk to people and find out what's really going on, what's their side of the story, to only get attacked and realize that they're all full of shit, okay? Can't believe any of them. They're all full of shit.
A country divided. This says here, shocking video shows a protester shooting a federal officer in the face with a paintball gun from a moving car amid ongoing protests outside LA's federal building. We got. Here's another clip from Trump's speech for Bragg.
But they're too tough. They don't allow it. And attempting to infiltrate and occupy federal buildings wearing armor and face shields. The best money can buy. Somebody's financing it. We're going to find out through Pam Bondi and Department of Justice who it is. They're already on it. Who's financing all this equipment? Very professional. Under the Trump administration, this anarchy will not stand. We will not allow federal agents to be attacked, and we will not allow an American city to be invaded and conquered by a foreign enemy. And that's what they are. A lot of those people were let in here by the Biden administration. They just poured right in. They came from prisons. They came from jails. From all to stomp on them, but
I don't know. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Perception management. What's the truth?
And Tommy Chu is his photographer. Bill, what are you seeing? Because we're seeing a lot.
Hey, Trace. Well, this new random massive group of protesters just showed up here, hundreds upon hundreds of them. We're walking behind them trying to catch up right now. They've taken over the street. I don't see any LAPD here. They've got like their own vehicle convoy. You'll notice it's all foreign flags. Tommy, if you can just kind of pan off, it's all Mexican flags, Palestinian flags, flags from like El Salvador. It's all foreign. And they have their own little vehicle convoy here. Right now, I don't see a single LAPD officer. Let me turn around and show you how long this convoy goes through downtown LA. You can see all the way in the background, more Mexican flags, more vehicles. I do not know where this group came from. We were chasing an entirely different group earlier with LAPD, and then this one comes out of nowhere. This is even bigger than the initial group we were with when LAPD was pushing them around. So, again, I'm not seeing a single law enforcement officer anywhere. Heads up, watch out for these cars, Tommy. We're going to keep walking down this way and see if we can catch up with them. Yeah, they're shooting fireworks. You might be able to hear that, too. LAPD has a helicopter above us now, so they're going to be watching this. I'm not hearing any sirens or anything yet, still not seeing any cruisers, but they clearly have eyes on this, which is, again, a huge convoy. They keep shooting off fireworks. We're going to keep trying to follow them here. So I would imagine, Trace, it's a matter of time before LAPD tries to respond with some units here, because this is the biggest protest group we've seen of the day so far. And I honestly have no idea where they came from, because we were following that other big group, and then this one just showed up out of nowhere.
Is that, I don't know. Wow. That's all I can say. Like I said yesterday, I don't really see anything good here. I see a lot of bad, don't see anything good. This is just too messy. Still too messy. Just too messy. Too messy. I think there's just too much possibility. Too many people being hurt. What have I got here for you? Hang on. Okay, let's go back to this. Hang on. We've got the mayor, I think this is, don't know if this is live or not. Bring it up for you.
Of blocks has been extensive. We are 1 year away from the World Cup. This is about beautifying our city and bringing our city together. And so I am calling on business leaders, community leaders, faith leaders to come together downtown in the next few days to talk about how we are going to clean up the city. Obviously, city workers are already out there removing the graffiti, but this is so extensive, it's going to take community-wide involvement. We had launched a program called Shine LA a couple of months ago in preparation for the World Cup, and now we are called on to direct that citywide. We need people from all over the city to come to downtown and to help with this effort. The staff, the mayoral staff standing behind me, represent the best of our organizers and community liaisons, and they will be leading that effort. I do want to go back and say that, just go back in time a minute. On Thursday of last week, Los Angeles was peaceful. There was nothing going on here that warranted the federal intervention that took place the very next day. If we want to look at the cause of what is happening here, I take it back to raids that took place on Friday and the uncertainty and the fear and the fact that families across the city are terrified that they don't know if they should go to work, they don't know if they should go to school. We have people that were detained. We don't even know the exact numbers of the people that were detained. We have people that have not had contact with legal representation, nor have they even had contact with their families. And so there is an awful lot of concern. When the administration started, they said that this was about crime. They were going to go after violent felons, drug dealers, and I don't know how that matches with the scenes that we saw of people in Home Depot running through the parking lot because they were afraid that they were going to get arrested. You are talking about people who are trying to survive day by day, which is what a day laborer is doing, and why they would be considered as part of a problem as opposed to contributing to our economy is very difficult for me to understand. We've also received reports of people who were here legally, who were showing up for their annual appointment at the immigration office and maybe even showing up with their family and getting detained. This is just absolutely unnecessary. People have asked me, what are the Marines going to do when they get here? That's a good question. I have no idea. The National Guard that are here now have one assignment, and that is to protect one building, which is the federal building downtown. The second building, which is the federal building on Westwood Boulevard. And as far as I know, nothing has happened in Westwood at all. So this was not needed. The idea that the administration would usurp the authority of our state government, take it away from our governor, Gavin Newsom. The governor knows that if we put a request in for the National Guard and it went to him, he would comply. There was never an issue there because we were never thinking about calling upon the National Guard. So I do want you to know that the violence that has happened has required LAPD to ask for additional assistance, but not from the federal government. We are a county of 88 cities. There's a number of police departments in those cities, and we have the sheriff's department. And so we have received assistance from the California Highway Patrol. I mentioned the sheriffs from Orange County, San Bernardino, Riverside, Santa Barbara, Ventura County, and a number of law enforcement departments around the county. So with them being fully deployed now, we're establishing a unified command under LAPD and Chief McDonnell, which will accelerate our ability to respond to hotspots when people splinter off and create pockets of trouble. So I do want to thank all the officers who've been working tirelessly and putting themselves at risk to keep our city safe. But the real solution of all of this is for the administration to stop the raids. We have heard that these raids might take place for the next 30 days. We don't know how many are going to take place in a given day. And you just think about the disruption to families and the disruption to our local economy. You might have a mother who goes to work in someone's home doing childcare or taking care of the household, a father who is the gardener or doing landscaping, people who are working in factories, and people without documents who are running small businesses, contributing to our economy in every step of the way. So I just want to conclude by saying we are 12 months away from the World Cup. We need the administration to help us prepare. They are talking about spending over $100 million with this deployment, which is why I say that I feel like we've all been in Los Angeles a part of a grand experiment to see what happens when the federal government decides they want to roll up on a state or roll up on a city and take over. So with that, I would open it up for questions, of which Zach will manage.
I can't hear the question, but I'm sorry, it's off mic.
Well, first of all, when I say a few streets, I don't mean that to mean like it's very small, because the vandalism, especially the graffiti, has happened kind of outside of that. But nevertheless, I'm trying to counter the image that this is happening all over our city, because it is not. And so we do want law enforcement to respond aggressively. Anybody that is out committing crimes are not doing it in solidarity with immigrants. They are doing the exact opposite. So we have to enforce the law here. I'm going to continue advocating with the federal government, though, to see how disruptive this is. But there needs to be a call that says this is unacceptable, and if you engage in this behavior, you will be prosecuted. Now, we're looking at things like curfews. We're looking at other aggressive response that we can have in case this violence breaks out again.
Do you think there will be a curfew? And wouldn't you say that the LAPD is being aggressive?
Well, I do think that they are, but I do think that we need to be in terms of prevention. And I don't mean aggressive in terms of engaging with the crowd, but there's things that you can do to prevent. So I had a brief conversation with the chief this morning about a curfew. So we will be meeting about that later on today. And that's the type of aggressive tactic I was referring to. The new information this minute. Go ahead.
Yes, and so your response to that, it seems like despite calls from you and the governor, the answers are going the opposite direction.
Well, that doesn't...
Okay, so we've been listening to Mayor Karen Bass. This was from earlier today. We're going to step out of this. We're going to continue to keep up some of these live looks. This is what we call them as for about 10 minutes until the top of the hour.
Okay, so we'll pull out of this. And we'll take a little break and then come back and move on to other news, top news from today. So stay with me.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow. Maybe too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're back, and today, the Auditor General in Canada released a report into that ArriveCan app, that controversial app that sucked up a bunch of taxpayer dollars. So, Karen Hogan delivered a scathing report today, focusing on the federal government's handling of contracts tied to Government of Canada Strategies, the primary contractor behind the controversial ArriveCan app, launched in April of 2020 to screen travelers during the COVID-19 pandemic. ArriveCan's cost ballooned from an initial $80,000 to an estimated $59.5 million. Though Hogan says the true cost is impossible to determine due to the Canada Border Service Agency's abysmal record keeping. Wow. The report reveals that GC Strategies, a two-person IT firm, was awarded 106 contracts by 31 federal organizations between 2015 and 2024 with a maximum value of more than $90 million, though only $65 million was paid out. Hogan's audit of a sample of these contracts was found widespread failures to follow procurement and security rules with little evidence to show the work was even completed. And this is raising serious questions about whether taxpayers got value for the money. So Hogan's findings today echo her February 2024 report, which blasted the CBSA, Public Health Agency of Canada as well, PHAC, and Public Services and Procurement Canada for a glaring disregard for basic management practices. Back then, she noted that 18% of invoices couldn't be confirmed as related to ArriveCan, and 177 app versions were released with minimal testing, including one in June 2022 that wrongly sent 10,000 travelers into quarantine. Today's report doubles down, highlighting how GC Strategies was awarded a $25 million competitive contract after helping craft its requirements, giving them an unfair edge. The audit also uncovered a troubling lack of transparency. There's no record of who decided to award GC Strategies the initial non-competitive contract in 2020, and the firm didn't even submit a proposal. Worse, CBSA employees failed to disclose dinners and other activities with contractors, violating the agency's code of conduct and raising concerns about conflicts of interest. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre seized on the report today, calling ArriveCan a corrupt app that wasted $60 million of taxpayers' money, 750 times its original budget. He accused the Trudeau government of rigging contracts for well-connected firms like GC Strategies while subcontracted most of the work, while pocketing commissions of 15 to 30%. Poilievre vowed to slash outsourcing if elected, pointing to the $1,090 average daily cost for external contractors versus $675 for equivalent government IT roles. Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc admitted the contracting process was unacceptable, but cited the chaos of the pandemic as context. A lot of money flowing during the pandemic for contracts, research, apps. The CBSA claims it's already acting on Hogan's recommendations, including creating an executive procurement review committee and requiring employees to disclose vendor interactions. An ongoing CBSA internal investigation has referred some employee and contractor cases to the RCMP, with agency president Aaron O'Gorman expressing concern over persistent collaboration between certain officials and GC Strategies. Today in the House, during question period, this was the topic du jour, of course. Let's bring up the exchange that opened question period. And here we go.
A scathing audit on the top Arrive scam fraudster GC Strategies. This two-person basement dwelling company feasted on $64 million taxpayer dollars. This was a direct gift from the Liberal government who allowed basic procurement rules to be completely ignored over the last 10 years. Canadians still don't know who did the work, what was done, if they were qualified, if they had security clearances. This is complete government incompetence. The ask is simple. When will taxpayers get their money back?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. I thank the Auditor General for her service. I note that GC Strategy has been prohibited from government contracts for 7 years, and it's that standard, the minimum. As a member of Canada's new government and a new member of Parliament, we will uphold higher standards, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations.
Mr. Speaker, shockingly, the very same Liberal ministers who had their fingerprints all over the Arise scam are still in cabinet today. Right. Namely, the Jobs Minister, the U.S. Trade Minister, and his Foreign Affairs Minister. Their lack of ministerial responsibility is both negligent and inexcusable. The fraudulent payment of $64 million isn't just about reckless spending. It's a total waste of taxpayer dollars and the betrayal of Canadians who are living through a cost of living crisis. So I ask the Prime Minister again, when will taxpayers get their money back?
That's a good question. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to commend the members opposite, for supporting the Making Life More Affordable Act to get taxpayer dollars back to Canadians. And commit. This government is committed. This new government is committed to making the best use of all taxpayers' dollars.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General just slammed these Liberals in her report this morning, said what we've known all along. The Liberals have broken our military. Today's F-35 report criticized the Liberals for misleading cost projections that are 50% higher by over $14 billion, ongoing construction delays for necessary infrastructure, ignoring the severe pilot and mechanic shortage, and implementing weak oversight mechanisms. The ministers who are responsible for this debacle are still sitting in here. Will the Prime Minister hold them accountable for this mess?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know if the member opposite holds himself accountable for letting military spending fall below 1% of GDP. When the Conservatives were in government. This government has doubled military spending in cash terms. We're meeting our NATO obligations this year, leading from the front.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake.
Prime Minister, we actually delivered for our military. We bought brand new 5 CF-18 Bowmasters, new Hertz, new Leopard tanks, new Chinook helicopters. We delivered. Instead, what we got here is an Auditor General report referenced her 2018 report on Canada's fighter jets. That report said the biggest obstacle to meeting operational requirements was a shortage of fighter pilots and technicians. Over the last Liberal decade, the Liberals have worsened this capability gap through mismanagement and completely ignoring the Auditor General's recommendations. So the question is, the Foreign Minister who was responsible for the military back in 2018 is still in his cabinet. Why?
Good question. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was proud to stand yesterday with the Minister of National Defence, the Chief of the Defence Force, and announce the largest increase in military expenditure in decades. Building our military strong, building our military with Canadian technology, Canadian jobs, Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum. That's what the review of the F-35 is about. That's what the future of this country is about.
The Honourable Member for Charles-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General severely has criticized the government's management of the F-35 fighter purchase. It's now 50% over budget, $30 billion in costs. There are delays in construction, a lack of personnel, and insufficient oversight are threatening this project, and Canadians are paying the price. And the Prime Minister seems to have forgotten to mention that the new money announced yesterday is just to pay these cost overruns. He promoted the former Defence Minister. Why? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, one of the first measures that I took was a review of the F-35 contract. Because we have to do what's right for Canadians, what's right for Canada, what's right for our security, and we will report back to Parliament over the summer. The Honourable Member for Charles-Haute-Saint-Charles. The Prime Minister is the only thing that's new in this government, because the rest of the government is an old government, and we're seeing the problems with this incompetent old government. We've learned today, Mr. Speaker, from the Auditor General, that the main subcontractor of Arrive scam got $64 million from this Liberal government, even if it was under investigation by the RCMP. GC Strategies is a company with just 2 employees. It got 106 contracts from 31 federal organizations for a total value of $92.7 million. Is that Liberal incompetence, or is it corruption, or is it both? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, last year, after an independent process, the government suspended that company for 7 years. It's done. It's over. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, sit down. It's a little complicated. The Prime Minister gave Canadians back money that they had not paid. So it's an advance for a sum of money that they will not pay back. So about $4 billion was distributed to Canadians.
Okay, we're going to pull out that and go to Poilievre, because he doesn't have a seat in the House because he lost his election in his riding. He still has to win the by-election in order to come back into the House, but outside the House, still trying to be a leader of a party that he's not a leader of, still living in the residence for the leader of the official opposition. Everyone anticipating that he's going to get back in. I don't know, that's kind of unprecedented too, isn't it? I don't know. Has anyone ever done that before? Not actually be elected, not actually be the leader of the opposition, and still get to live in the official residence? Anyway. Let's go to Poilievre. Here are his comments, feedback, answers to questions regarding the Arrive Can app today.
So now, who's responsible? Well, Public Safety Minister LeBlanc was at the time, Public Safety Minister who helped get these contracts out. Now he's been promoted in the Liberal government. You've got Patty Hajdu, who was the Health Minister that kicked off the Arrive Can app. She as well has been promoted. And then you've got F-35s. Liberal mismanagement of the process has now driven up costs by 50%, or $9 billion. The infrastructure delays are going to mean we need 2 fighter squadrons slated for completion in 2031, more than 3 years late, forcing extra spending on interim facilities. They haven't recruited enough pilots to fill the gap. They've got weak project management, risk management, and coordination plans remain incomplete and slow. And the bottom line is that rising costs, construction delays, staffing gaps, weak oversight threaten the ongoing introduction of the fighter jets. And who was responsible for that? Well, Anita Anand was one of the defense ministers who helped bring about this boondoggle. She has been promoted in this government. So in all of these cases, you have promotions for those who caused the problem. Now, finally, you've got federal land for housing. In the middle of the worst housing crisis in the world, the government has failed to live up to its promise to sell off federal land and buildings for housing. They said in 2017 half of their buildings and land were underused or vacant, and yet only 2% of it has been disposed of for homes. They've built only 309 homes, 90% short of the 4,000 they promised. It takes them 8 years to sell a property. 8 years. You've got $3.9 billion we could be bringing in over the next decade if we sold off these buildings and avoided having the operational costs of them. And the fact that they've missed these targets means that there are countless young people who can't afford homes, single mothers who pay higher rent, seniors choosing between eating and heating because the cost of housing is out of control. Again, the housing minister who caused this disaster has now been promoted to Liberal Minister of Justice. So it is the same Liberal ministers, the same Liberal gang, making the same Liberal mistakes that cost Canadians a fortune.
Okay. We probably haven't heard the last of that. Maybe we have. I don't know. I think this is a story that now is probably going to fade away a little bit because it's just gone through so many cycles. But so much money has just gone wayward. And my guess is we're never going to get that back. RFK Jr. Oh boy. I don't feel good about, this is me just editorializing. I don't feel good about any of this. I feel very uneasy about what's going on. He has fired the entire 17 member panel of an advisory board for the Center for Disease Control. Unbelievable. So this happened this afternoon, and he's controversial in and of himself. We could get into a lot of that. This is a guy who injects methylene blue into himself, and he's the head of the Health and Human Services Division. So he took center stage at a panel, I guess, to discuss cross-border health policy, vaccine skepticism. Today, he gets with CBC. Wow. So anyway, he fired all 17 members of the panel, calling it a necessary step to restore public trust in vaccine science. And he argued that conflicts of interest within the committee had undermined its credibility. A claim met with sharp criticism from panelist Dr. Theresa Tam, Canada's chief public health officer, who called the move reckless and warned it could erode trust in vaccination programs globally. And the discussion turned tense when Kennedy reiterated his stance on autism, calling it an epidemic and pledging to pinpoint its cause by September. Canadian autism advocate Natalie Stetchison, also on the panel, pushed back, saying autism doesn't destroy lives. But these comments fuel stigma and harm, she said. She cited Canada's own data, noting that 1 in 50 children aged 1 to 17 are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, largely due to improved screening, not environmental causes, as Kennedy has suggested. So let me just see here. I just need to, I'm going to take another quick break and come back on the other side. I'm going to look for a clip here. Let me see if I can find this. No promises, but I've got other news to share with you today too. So don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so let me just pull this aside. I don't want to run the clip. I'm just worried about a copyright strike on it. And of course, there's a lot of polarization over this online tonight as well. Yeah. Everything's getting turned upside down. You go to the government website right now for the deals with public guidance on vaccines, and everything is like opposite to what it was before. And it just seems kind of like how are people supposed to know what's true? Where are you supposed to get good advice when you have totally conflicting information on two sides? It seems just it seems hazardous. And whoever is in power is the authority on it, right? The voice that dominates. But is it true? Is the government in charge at the time the one you should listen to? It is who has the power, not necessarily the truth. So strange times. That being said, this brings us back to these healthcare issues, and that goes back to where else? The Ostrich farm in Edgewood, BC. CFIA still pushing ahead with plans, I guess, to call the ostriches out there after finding bird flu on the premises. This was back in December. The entire thing has been delayed 6 months, and a lot of really weird stuff has been going on out there, including COVID research, which they don't really talk about very much out there, the farm owners, or the social media influencers who continue, even tonight, to encourage people to go out to this open air bio research lab. And that is what it is. I've been digging in. Even last night, we had Jason call in, and I appreciate what he was saying. He is very skeptical, as he's called in a couple of times, as other people have, and there are so many questions swirling around that place, leaving people wondering, were they really conducting COVID research? Which is not the reason the cull was ordered, by the way. The cull was ordered because birds got sick, 69 died. So you've got a big die-off. The second time birds have become sick out of that facility. They lost 10 some years earlier, and I don't know what else has gone on out there. 69 died, 2 tested, multiple samples taken, results on site. Also, samples from the deceased birds sent to a research or to a lab to again test, and came back, and they actually identified the particular strain. David Dixon will join us shortly to dig into some of the new information that has just come to light today. In any event, the farm owners, if they own the farm, because there are even questions about that, we're working with a lab and a professor over in Japan getting COVID antigens to inject into these birds. We now know from the farm owners that they had no permits, no licenses, no oversight whatsoever, because they were not being regulated at all, and they're part of an experiment, injecting these birds over and over again with COVID antigens. We've had Dr. Stephen Pelican, who says, well, that isn't something that needs a permit. He says that we can get these. He says that anybody can go and get this stuff. I've tried, and I don't think that is accurate. I'm pretty certain it isn't, because he said you could go to Shoppers Drug Mart. And no, someone put a post up overnight criticizing me, because accusing me of saying that I was taking the information incorrectly from Dr. Pellick, saying that I was saying that we could go by pathogens. No, I said that what Dr. Pellick said, and this is exactly where I'm coming from. Dr. Pellick says that the birds were being injected with COVID antigen, which is a portion of the virus that is supposed to be rendered inert and therefore non-infectious in itself. And so that he says you can go buy this spike protein at the pharmacy, that anybody can get it, or I could get it from Signal Chem, a company in Canada that supplies these kinds of things. I contacted them yesterday. I've had no response back. Again, very strange. A lot of these companies, I'm contacting a bunch of these companies that have been set up seemingly around, kind of like ArriveCan, around the same time as ArriveCan. A lot of these companies set up trying to acquire this experimental spike protein COVID antigen that they were injecting into these ostriches out at Universal Ostrich Farm that was developed by this Dr. Tsukamoto over in Japan. And I haven't been able to buy it. Not yet. I called pharmacies. I've called labs. And then there's that the other weird thing about this whole story, and I'm going somewhere with this, there's that $13 million contract that was awarded from the federal government for research to Immune Biosolutions in Sherbrooke, Quebec. And then we were told that the farm was getting their COVID antigens from this company in Sherbrooke. Now, Jason called in again last night, wondering if this place is even real, if this company even exists, and that information lends itself to the idea that maybe this whole thing is just a scam, that maybe the birds were never injected with anything, that maybe no actual science was being conducted at the site, as the CFIA has asserted. But today, knowing the address for the company, which I did track down, I'll show you the actual building where this company is located. Here it is. So I've confirmed that the company does exist and that it is still in business. I was able to do that today. So this is Immune Biosolutions. This is the building where Immune Biosolutions is located. Now, the thing is, this is sort of a research hub, a sort of a building that's been set up for research companies, especially bio research companies and technology companies. And this is in Sherbrooke, Quebec, on Rue Maximilien Chaillon in Sherbrooke, Quebec, 2650. That's the address. So we know that's the address for Immune Biosolutions. But as I have been trying to do two things, acquire the COVID antigen, I said I'm going to set up a biolab in my backyard, since Dr. Pellick, who is advocating and defending the farm and has testified as a friendly witness for the farm in court. He came on the program and said, you don't need any permits to do COVID research like they were doing in on the farm. No permits needed to get this experimental antigen and inject it into birds as part of an experiment. You don't need a permit to set it up. You don't need any permits to acquire the antigen either. So if they were getting it from here, I couldn't get it at the pharmacy. I couldn't get it from Signal Chem so far. Haven't been able to get it anywhere. And I have been calling around because I want to set up this biolab in my backyard, just like at Universal Ostrich Farm, with no permits, because anybody can do it. And I called here. I can't get an answer. I've sent them messages repeatedly. I called there again multiple times today. Every extension I've tried at this company, Immune Biosolutions, nobody picks up the phone. No one's returned any messages so far. Nobody's responded to my email correspondence. But they are in business because there are other companies in the building, and I called other companies in the building. And they've confirmed that, yes, indeed, they do see employees in there. They do see cars in the parking lot from time to time. So it's a real company. It's a real thing. It is there. It's in that building. And their phone lines are still connected. And there are people who show up there. Who? I still don't know. But we're still digging. So that tells me a few different things, and it probably will tell you a few different things as well. We will extrapolate on that in the days ahead as our investigation into all of this continues, because what's going on out at that farm is mysterious, but it's pretty clear that if you just take the testimony from the people at the farm, if you just take them at their word, they were injecting this experimental antigen into these birds. And yet they still encourage people to come there with their kids. They've set up bouncy castles because there's a big protest going on out there. Although it seems like, I guess, as this information that we're sharing with people is beginning to make the rounds and people are becoming more aware maybe of the fuller story, what we're finding is more and more people are kind of staying away from the place. So the protest itself is down to kind of a bare bones number of people, apparently. Let me see if I can find you the clip here tonight. No, not that one, not that one, not that one. Might have to just bring it back up altogether here. Let me cue it up. I'll take a short break while I find it for you. We're gonna dig into this, and David will be joining us shortly to share some new documents tonight that I think will be very revealing with regard to this weird place, this universal ostrich farm thing. It's the strangest story I've ever covered. We'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay. I'm going to show you what they're doing out there tonight. So a lot of the people have left. They don't have many people there. And I've already lost the clip again because we have so many windows open. That's okay. I will bring it up here. My apologies. I had it queued, pop off, pop back on, and we lose it already. But here we go. Bring it up on the screen. 25,000 clicks later, and we've got the video up. Almost. Okay. 27,000 clicks later. Here's the guy who tried to hijack our live feed the other night, Jim Kerr out there. And they're still saying, bring your families, bring your kids. Everybody get out to the farm, to the bio research facility where they had 69 birds die.
We're here at the ostrich farm, and you should be here too. Here, I have somebody who has something to say about it, and it's really important that you listen to him real close.
Why aren't you here with us?
Where is everyone?
It's a simple question, and I want you guys to understand how very important that this particular situation that we find ourselves in is right now. A lot of things are converging in one story, and that's here at Universal Ostrich Farm.
Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah, I did. And this is where they've had 2 birds apparently shot. in the dark of night. On 2 separate occasions, they're telling us somebody snuck onto the property to assassinate 2 ostriches, shooting 2 ostriches in the heads. But hey, bring your kids. There was another video that they posted because some of the neighbors are pretty upset. People in the community are upset with what's going on out there. There was someone who was driving erratically, almost smashed into a car. Jim Kerr posted that live, and at first thought that would be a good thing to show people, to show how some of the people out there are crazy. And then later, like very short time later, took that all down and then made a video saying that he shouldn't have really shown that because, well, yeah, pretty obvious, because now you're showing that things are kind of heated out there and maybe it's not a great, safe place to bring kids and families. Meanwhile, they've got bouncy castles set up. And then you've also got a quarantine order in place that has come from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for the place because you've got a confirmed bird flu outbreak, which doesn't kill people, only in rare occasions does it transfer to humans. We've seen human deaths, particularly from this specific strain of the disease. A poultry worker in Ohio died from it. But they haven't complied with the orders, the quarantine orders at all. They've ignored the safety pretty much. They've ignored, from everything I've been seeing, the orders to improve biosecurity measures and prevent ducks that potentially could be infected or potentially get infected from the ostriches from coming into contact with the ostriches. They've got a pond there. They've confirmed that in the fall, they get about 500 ducks flying in and out, coming into contact with the ostriches. There's a pond. They throw it feed. It attracts the birds. Even now, in documents, we're seeing that they've confirmed they have about 250 ducks still that fly in, fly out all the time. 250, 300. That's exactly what I said. Katie Pasitny, the daughter of Karen Esperson, co-owner of the farm, said in a video live the other night, and not on our program, but in another program. And then people are saying, no, that's not true, but she said it. And then they said it in a document that was confirmed and released again, I believe today, again on their own website, where they're trying to say that CFIA is lying about everything that they're posting, but I'm not seeing that, frankly, folks. I'm just not. And they're saying that it's impossible to put up netting. I'm going to show you something. They say it's impossible to put up netting to prevent these ducks from coming into contact with the ostriches. They claim they put up some fencing to try to prevent the ostriches from coming into contact there, but doesn't seem to be adequate, whatever they've done. And in fact, they didn't put up some fencing when they were ordered to do it. But here's the thing. They're saying they can't put up the netting because there's too much area to cover. I'm going to show you some pictures here. And this is from another farm not far from where I live. This is a blueberry farm. I've got other videos of people with chicken operations too that have put up netting, just to show you that, yes, you can do this. It's not that it's difficult. You see behind this young lady here, this was just posted on the internet within the last day. I don't know who this young girl is, but it's just a public photo on Google. And this is a blueberry farm. And they put up netting over the entire operation every year to keep the birds out. No problems, no issues. They do it all the time so that the birds don't come in and eat the crop. Well, they can do it. There it is there. See all the netting? That's what the CFIA is saying they should do, just over this little pond that they have on the property. I don't know if they're asking them to do to cover the entire property. I don't think they are. But even if they needed to, they could move the birds into a smaller area, corral them, and put the netting up. I'm just showing you that, other farms do these things for a variety of reasons. And this entire blueberry farm, this huge blueberry farm, is covered in this kind of netting. I can drive out there. I could get you pictures of it right now. But here they are. I don't need to. This shows you how it's done. Maybe this will help them out at the farm in Edgewood. This is how it's done, folks. You put up the posts, you put up the netting. Oh, that's the bird that they claim was killed. In any event, David is waiting in the back room here. Let me bring him up on the screen. David Dixon, former police officer, investigator, and somebody who's been digging pretty deep into this and has more information to share with us this evening on this very strange, bizarre health issue, public safety issue, maybe even an issue that stretches right into international politics. What is new on the Ostrich front tonight, my friend? Can you hear me, David? Can you hear me, David? I don't think he can hear me. On the Ostrich front tonight, my friend.
I'm just trying to get. I don't.
Can you hear me, David?
I can hear you, but not through the
Can you hear me,
script.
David? I don't think he can hear me. There's a delay. Tonight, my friend. I'll tell you what. I'll take a little break, and maybe David can work out his delay issue. Let me just pull him down off the screen while he works this out. I'll be right back on the other side. I'm not sure what the heck is going on over there. We'll figure it out, though. Stay with us.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's try one more time. Is that any better?
No, I can't. As soon as you switch back to that, I could hear the music. I'm going to log off and come back on.
Okay, yeah, there's just a delay. No problem. One more transition, and hopefully that fixes it.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's try it one more time. Is that any better?
That's better. I can hear you.
Okay. I think
I could hear the audio in the intros, but as soon as you come live, I couldn't hear a thing. But
very strange.
We're good.
Well, so what would you say, David? Would you recommend people take their children and their families and get out there and help them protest at the Universal Ostrich Farm? Is that a safe place to go?
I wouldn't recommend an RCMP officer to go there without a full containment unit in place, let alone their children. Particularly, the more I hear, as I've said a few times, nothing would make me happier from a biosecurity perspective than to find out that this was just one big scam and nothing could be done. But the more information that comes out, particularly the information that this family are and their experts are filing into court through lawyers, swearing as the truth, I become more and more concerned, not less. And so we've got to, you have that position where you say, do I just go, oh, it'll be fine, just go out there? And we assume that they're just trying to con people, in which case, why would you be going out there to support them? But it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. As I've said multiple times, if we in the police got a call that somebody had received a letter and it had some white powder on it, we don't assume it's flour. We assume it's anthrax until proven otherwise, and we treat it as such. And typically, agencies that are responsible, including the RCMP, Health Canada, etc., would be treating, based on the information that's been given by their experts, their own testimony, and their constant publications, which now appear to be coming through some PR firm. They're very polished. They seem to have been queued up in advance to come back at the statement that was officially published by the CFIA. And we've now got these videos that are cartoon videos that are designed to encourage certain types of people to come. It is definitely a place that, as I say, forget about children. Children shouldn't be anywhere near that location, nor should adults. Even professionals like the RCMP shouldn't be going there without taking proper precautions. Now, I can say that as somebody who throughout COVID never wore a mask, never took a test. I can't wear a mask. I've got pulmonary fibrosis. But if I'd been dispatched to that location, I would have been head to toe with, I would have insisted on either scuba or saber, supplied air or self-contained breathing apparatus. I wouldn't even risk, because we're talking about airborne pathogens that they appear to have been working with that may or may not be significantly impactful to humans. But you can't take that chance until you know. And yeah, they might be contained at the moment, but again, all there's been a bit in the last few days of, and there was from the start, some people saying it's a con, viruses don't exist, and it's all a joke. And okay, well then, why are you out supporting this place? Because they are doubling down in their filings into court. They're doubling down in their public response. Over the last few days, we've had, since the conversation with Dr. Pellick, we've had a number of updates from the farm and some additional filings into court by their lawyers and statements. I haven't got the final documents yet. A colleague of mine has got them. I've seen some of them. The one that sort of sends up all the alarm bells is as of, and I can throw it up on the screen, but basically one of the paragraphs is from David Belinsky's latest statement, which
David Belinsky is one of the co-owners of the farm. Yep.
And also there was some lack of clarity as to whether Dave Belinsky was a co-owner of Struthio Bio or whether Karen was the partner in Struthio Bio. But and also, was there a difference in the ownership between Universal Ostrich Farms and Struthio Bio? Well, according to this statement that has been filed into court, it actually says that they're not the same owners, but Universal Ostrich Farm is owned solely between Karen Esperson and Dave Belinsky, and Struthio Bio was set up with 50-50 shares between Karen Esperson and Dave Belinsky. When I read that, I say that they're both the same owners. So when you write up a contract that says we have to provide these eggs to Struthio Bio, otherwise we're in breach of contract, and the sole owners in both companies are the same people. That's that's a bit of a strange thing to say. But in Dave Belinsky's latest statement, he clarifies the ownership of the company Struthio Bio here in Alberta. So that first paragraph's talking about Universal Ostrich. And then he goes in to say that as of April 2024, Karen and I, that would be Dave Belinsky and Karen Esperson, negotiated and entered into agreements which would, inter alia, legal terms. Basically, they'd entered into an agreement, a legal agreement, to implement new ownership structure for Struthio Bio. Under this proposed restructuring, an interest, now there's obviously when they've written it, somebody is actually lined out the word majority. That's probably done after the first copy was sworn. And now it says an interest. So I don't know what the percentage interest would be, but Struthio would be transferred to new principals, i.e. new ownership, and governed by a board of directors, including Dr. Tsukamoto.
And again, so people understand, Dr. Tsukamoto is a researcher or a professor of some kind over in Japan at Kyoto University, who's been working on research with ostriches and antibodies, and the farm started to collaborate, work with him, and he developed this COVID antigen, which he was supplying to the farm. At some point, we're told he was supplying that to the farm. They were also getting it from that company in Quebec for a while, they say. And this is an experimental COVID antigen, not apparently the virus itself, but a component of it, which when I look up the regulations on these things, it is restricted. You do need to be licensed in order to use it, handle it. There are regulations surrounding it, not the least of which the concerns are that if you have people using it, you need to have qualified people administering this stuff because they're being exposed to it themselves. And it can affect people's immune systems, human immune systems, if they come into contact with it. So anyway, I just digress a little bit. So I'll just throw it back to you, David. Then these are the new documents. This is new information that's coming out today.
We will get, there will be a full set of documents, court documents published later today. That should come. That will be published by Canuck Law, Babylon Beaver, on Twitter. She's got a Substack that we're up to Substack 5 at this point. The last one being all the court filings in relation to ownership of the farm and all the actions on the previous companies and everything else. What's up at the screen right now is, as Dr. Pellick describes it, these are recombinant proteins. They're not the virus, he keeps saying. They're recombinant proteins. Now, anybody who this is a description from a major publication organization that deals with all this. And here it describes, in words that for the freedom movement would have terrified them every time they read these words. We talk about, they talk about, oh, there's DNA in it and oh, messenger RNA. Well, guess what? To make these recombinant proteins, they're the technologies that Dr. Pellick and people like Dr. David Speaker and all the other freedom movement saviors and all the research that's now sponsored by Jay Bhattacharya and RFK Jr., they all use this messenger RNA, recombinant DNA, in order to create these COVID antigens. This is how they're created. They take the actual virus and then run it through all these steps to create this recombinant protein. And the recombinant protein are the words that Dr. Pellick uses. So, you can say, I'm not an expert. You can say, I'm not a scientist. I don't know what I'm talking about. But all I can do is quote you what Dr. Pellick said a few days ago now. And if you watch that 7-hour section, and I'll even give you the timestamps of when he said it. So at 1 minute 30, he was asked about if he knew what they were injecting, because he'd said he wasn't there till 2024. And he said, yes, I knew they were recombinant proteins. Here's your description of how a recombinant protein is created. Then 10 minutes later, he says, I sent recombinant proteins to people. They can buy them online. Now, Rick's had some difficulty in doing that, and in person or online. And then at 3 hours and 44 minutes in, he says they were selling recombinant proteins for sale. That was SARS-CoV-2 proteins. That's COVID. And then he says, I made them in my own lab. So this is the technology I'm assuming he's using. There are some other similar technologies using CRISPR, which RFK Jr. is very heavily invested in, along with a bunch of other people. CRISPR is that gene editing and gene modification technology that everybody's terrified of. That's on the 6th of June. Jay Bhattacharya and RFK Jr. were singing the praises of. This particular CRISPR technology is effectively what these scientists are using to do this gene splicing,
to digitally create spike proteins and components of viruses using basically digital technology. And we've seen Immune Biosolutions right on their website. They talk about hacking into the immune systems of chickens. This is the kind of work that has been ongoing. This is what the farm has been supporting or being part of by injecting their birds to get an immune system response, to produce antibodies in that are then passed on through the eggs, which are then sent off to these labs so that they can extract the antibodies from the yolks and do other experiments. You have another document up here?
Yeah, so this is a paper that Dr. Stephen Pellick contributed to, where again, he's talking about CRISPR in relation to some of the work he does and the work he's been doing. Work that up to now, I still haven't seen the final publications of his tests. He did confirm the other day that they've just finished the trials and he's just writing up the results of those trials, which was surprising because he, in his court filings, said he was absolutely certain he'd tested these ostrich eggs and it was guaranteed he had the right answer. But he hadn't even published his papers at that point, so it's not been peer reviewed. Nobody else has repeated his experiments. So, and this was the same with his work with Sheila Annette Lewis, who was a lady here in Alberta who had pulmonary fibrosis, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. She needed a transplant. It was refused because she hadn't had a COVID vaccine. So he offered to test her to show that she had antibodies, similar to showing the ostriches had antibodies. Now, because his technology had not been approved, that there are things you have to do before you can actually work with people and test them with the technology. Now, bear in mind, this is not injecting Sheila Annette Lewis with foreign substances. This was just somebody drawing blood from her, and he took that blood and tested it. So there was nothing going back into her. There was no risk to her. And yet, in order to do that, so he could actually present his findings in court, he had to enroll her in his clinical study that was still ongoing. Now, that to me raises some ethical questions, that a scientist would enroll somebody in a study who is towards the end of their life to test if they have COVID, nothing to do with their pre-existing idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, just so we can write an expert report to go into court. To me, I would suspect that would actually potentially impact the findings of the study, particularly as sadly Sheila did die not long ago, sadly, because of the lung transplant, or rather the lack thereof. So here we have, people playing with all these technologies, which are highly experimental, highly controversial in many areas. And they because of that, they're done in very, very controlled environments. But we seem to, when it comes to the ostrich farm, be doing anything. And again, we now have this Alberta connection, which has been not just confirmed by. Oh, I'll shut those.
Sorry.
There's one other window before that, the Struthio bio one.
Oops. This one?
There we go. Yeah, so this not just confirms Struthio bio was, we've gone beyond Struthio bio just being a company that was actually set up in April 2022. It wasn't just a company that's a shell company looking for investors that really wasn't doing anything in relation to these questionable research. Not questionable in the research itself, but in the way it's being conducted. But we have confirmation that this company was directly working with an intent for patenting and commercialization of these products, such as nasal sprays, masks, glowing masks, that the World Economic Forum was highly promoting. So this sort of all adds some credibility to this being a full-blown research farm. This is a farm that was in the farm has produced documents that say Dr. Tsukamoto's students and faculty members from the Kyoto Prefecture University were coming to the farm from Japan with biological materials and injecting them into the ostriches. Karen also confirmed that even before then, in August of 2021, she confirms multiple times in an interview that, and Dave Belinsky was in the same interview, and they confirm all the hens were injected. All the hens that were laying eggs were injected.
That's what they said. They did.
That's what they said. I mean, they're not just saying it to you, and not just. I mean, I was so surprised that a tenured professor at the UBC, who was an expert witness and says he's reviewed all the documents, would say that wasn't happening because it shouldn't, when they have actually outlined. And again, we're not talking about, okay, maybe they misunderstood the difference between a dead COVID virus and a COVID antigen, maybe. But they were very, very specific about that in multiple interviews. But I'm pretty sure they would know whether they, as the owners of the farm and the breeders of and keepers of these ostriches for over 30 years, they would know whether they injected a couple of them or close to 500 of them. Like, right. It's hard to believe that they would make that mistake. In fact, it's more likely that Dr. Pellick was mistaken in not knowing because he wasn't involved with them at that time. Or was he? The UBC was involved with them before then and during this period. The Kyoto University came on board at some point. And this is all being confirmed in documents. These experiments are going on at the farm. So we've got some confirmation that biological material has been stored from these experiments, is being stored in the farm, which I'm sure the owners would be, because there's this dispute of actually who owns it. Currently in the court records, David and Karen Belinsky are listed as undocumented owners. i.e. they're not the owners on the land titles, and they're not the owners that paid the mortgage, that bailed out the foreclosure. What probably the protesters don't understand is they're on, and they're actually moving about between 3 separate properties. So the farm property, the building where the majority of the protesters are camping out, that is a 50-acre parcel that the house is on, that is currently in dispute in the court documents, and you can go to Babylon Beavers or Canuck Laws posting on this, and all the court documents are there in relation to the ongoing dispute in court as to what's happening. So that's one section where potentially experimental biological materials are being stored. I don't know, next to the coffee creamer in the fridge. I don't know where they're being stored. Then the section of land where everybody's wandering around, where the ostrich pens are, is a separate 58-acre parcel. Now that was up for foreclosure through all these properties were for sale through the foreclosure process by Royal LePage, all by the same realtor. And when they got to court on that middle property where the ostriches currently stand, an offer came in for $320,000 into the court, and then Dave Belinsky said, "Can the court give me some time? I can come up with that money." So they gave him 2 weeks, and money came out of somewhere at that time. Who's on the title for that actual parcel of land? What mortgages are on it? I don't know, but the courts allowed him to purchase it using money that suddenly appeared, which is strange that if he had $320,000 to spare, that he would have not been able to pay the mortgages on the property to have it not go into foreclosure in the first place. So somehow, maybe he won the lottery, I don't know. Somewhere that money came up. So that's the middle set of land where all the ostriches are. There's a third piece of land, which when you look from above, it's where the river runs through it. That piece of land is a 120-acre parcel, which is owned by another party. And that's where they've been burying birds, unbeknownst to that party. Once they found out, they're not very happy that that birds have been buried in that area, in that piece of land, which is not where the pens are and not where the farm is. I don't know whether CFIA is aware of those additional graves or not. It's certainly something I don't even know whether, because the parcels are separated and ownership is discontinuous, CFIA may not even know of these additional properties. I mean, obviously they know the pen property, and this might be where the confusions come in, because the CFAA case lists Dave Belinsky as the owner of the property, which was strange because we know on land titles the Quigleys are the owner of the farm. But if he's managed to get himself through the foreclosure process on the title of the 58 acres where the ostriches are penned, that would explain why there's a disconnect between the court filings. And it's important to understand that the court filings have to go through certain processes. You can't just say, it's my property. You will be asked to prove that. And if you swear it in court and it's not yours. And that was something that had been confusing me, so I did some more digging. This is the notice of appeal, the first part of the reason they're appealing the CFAA's decision. What's really interesting about that, again, we come back to the murky nature of this whole farm and who owns what and who's doing what. But they're alleging that their previous counsel has a financial conflict of interest that relates to them benefiting from the ostriches being destroyed. That seems strange. I mean, I don't know how a lawyer would benefit from these ostriches because they get paid either way. Win or lose, the lawyers will be looking for. Yeah.
I think this is it right here.
Yep.
Section 13. In addition, and or in further alternative, the appellant submits that the order of Zinn, Justice Zinn, be set aside given the ineffective assistance of appellant's counsel at the application for judicial review. The appellant's prior counsel's acts and omissions at that hearing fell well outside the range of reasonable professional assistance, amounted to incompetence, and resulted in a miscarriage of justice. Notably, the appellant's prior counsel had a financial stake in the destruction of the appellant's ostriches, resulting in a blatant conflict of interest that adversely affected counsel's representation of the appellant's interests. That's bizarre.
I've never read any, like of all the court cases I've read or even been involved in, I've never read an accusation as serious as that against legal counsel. I mean, we're talking about offences that would typically have a lawyer disbarred and potentially prosecuted because the lawyer would have been obtaining money by deception and making false representation in court if they hadn't declared this.
And all of this is very important for people to know, especially if you come down on the side of this debate where you want to support the farm, support the, the idea that these ostriches should not be culled. If you're going to donate money, because people need some transparency here, especially if you're dealing with a situation where the farm owners may not actually be the owners. They may not own this farm. Are they even going to be around when all of this is finished? Even if the birds are saved from the cull, are these people actually going to be able to run the farm? What are you supporting? Is this a financially viable operation? It looks like they're in a dispute over whether they even get to stay on the farm. So what are people really being asked to donate to? And we're talking about a lot of money. So far, well over $250,000 donated.
And possibly more than that, because a lot of the donations are coming in through e-transfers. Yeah. And yeah, it's, again, an organization of a business, because let's put it frankly, this is actually one of multiple businesses that are directly involved in this, from the pet food business, the research of Universal Ostrich Farm, Struthio Bio, the research organization, the commercial operation selling eggs, which seemed to continue until at least last year.
Yeah, all these businesses set up. They have connections to all these, like a bunch of different businesses, not just the farm. Struthio Biolabs, another a company set up in Alberta that they're at least co-owners of, and there may be other investors, but Karen Esperson and Dave Belinsky, the owners of the farm, also owners of this other company in Alberta, and they're contracted to provide eggs. And in the court filings saying that if the birds are killed or culled, that they won't be able to meet their contractual obligations to a company that they own. So they would end up, I guess, suing themselves. A lot of this stuff just is bizarre.
And it seems strange that they talk about having basically needing all these donations, and they're the ones putting up the GoFundMes and pleading with people to help them, and they're fighting for everybody. I haven't seen the full Belinsky affidavit yet, but I am aware that there is a suggestion in the attachments to his supporting his affidavit that there was a significant amount of outside money from outside sources coming into that business to allow it to expand. And with the restructure, Karen Esperson would stay on as a VP at the new corporation, wherever that was, to do all this facility, where Dr. Sakamoto from Japan would now be in charge of it. So we've now got a fully operational Death Star in Alberta. which makes me question why there's not anybody in Alberta asking questions. There's a lot of people that have got major financial investments inside of Alberta, including, many of the people that have poked their nose into this situation. Are they speaking in relation to this because of their own conflict of interests? Maybe they could clear that up. It would be very simple for them to say yes or no. Maybe some of these court documents will expose some of that. And on top of all of that, we've got the ongoing fight against disinformation, as they're calling it, by what is clearly a professional PR firm, which, maybe they're doing it for free. Maybe this firm's come in to professionally produce videos, professionally worded and checked, because I'm pretty sure it's not somebody at the farm that's writing these breakdowns, because there's a lot of technical terminology in these breakdowns that when Katie was on, she couldn't even answer some of the most basic questions, and then refused to answer some basic questions. And Karen seems to have been confused about some items. Stephen Pellick doesn't seem to know what's going on. So somebody is writing these as a direct response to the CFAA's not lengthy statement. It was quite factual. You can dispute it. You can be unhappy with what they said, but a couple of days ago, the farm published their update in relation to the fines. They said we've received 2 fines, because there was a lot of confusion in the way the fines were being presented. I was aware that they'd received 1 fine early on, and then a second fine after that, and they were both $10,000 fines. Then there was the mainstream media came out with these articles that suggested there was a new $20,000 fine. That's not the case. That has been clarified by the farm to actually, not because they wanted to clarify that, but because they needed to address the CFAA statement. So they've confirmed there were two fines that they were issued with. One was for a failure to report, and one was for breaches of quarantine.
Right.
But
you know what? This is part of their part. They're actually involved in their own form of misinformation, because the real issue here is that first, they didn't report it to the CFIA, which is why they got the first $10,000 fine, and then they have failed to meet the conditions of the quarantine order. So they haven't complied. As I showed, they haven't put up the netting to keep the ducks out. They haven't put up the fencing. They haven't kept the people away from the ostriches. They just have not complied with any of the orders. So they got hit with another $10,000 fine. Now you can then seize on this, I guess, confusion over the total dollar amount, whether it was an additional 20,000 or whether it was a total of 20. But the bottom line is, the real important information is they didn't report it, and they haven't complied with the safety measures that they've been ordered to take to protect not only the people there and the public and other chicken operations, but even the ostriches themselves. They just haven't done any of it.
And that's where things got borderline hilarious, because in the published official statement to say this is our response to the disinformation from the CFAA, they actually say, here's the call log from the CFAA from the 28th of December, saying that we'd been in touch with them. Okay, so we keep that date in mind, the 28th of December. The fine they were issued was for not reporting to the CFAA between the 10th and 28th of December. So the allegation was you had to report, you knew something on the 10th and you didn't report it until the 28th. And in their defense, they said, here's proof we didn't report it till the 28th. It's like, you've just admitted your own guilt and provided all the evidence. So there's definitely some disinformation there, but it's not coming from the CFAA because you have just proved their case. And then on the second one, their argument wasn't that they hadn't breached quarantine. Their argument was they didn't receive the ticket properly. So it's like, yeah, we did commit the offence, but it was because it wasn't personally served on us. Now, the purpose of personal service is similar to contract law, is there has to be a way you can prove that the person received it in a timely fashion and had time to respond to it. So things that you would look for would be, has the person who received it, whether it was served in the technical requirement, has the person behaved as if they received it? Well, right after receiving it, Katie and Save Our Ostriches and the rest of them posted the detailed list of items that they were required to do in quarantine on their social media platform. Yeah, that is enough to prove service, because they say two things in it. They say, look at all these things they're expecting us to do, and this is what we've now got to do. And now they're saying, well, you never gave it us properly, so we never intended doing that anyway. And again, this is not a speeding ticket. This is about containing a hazardous biohazard situation where they have confirmed, and as you mentioned, they keep saying that it's only PCR tests and they're not reliable. And even Stephen Pellick started to say that, but then admitted the tests that they did on these animals was full genetic sequencing. They know for a fact what exactly these birds had and died of. It's not a question, and that's further than they do in most cases. It's, to actually go to the extent of doing full genetic sequences to identify. Now, I'm glad they have, because it's exposed another side of this, which is, how did these birds contract this very, very unique pathogen, which is actually, as Dr. Pellick called it, it's I can share this, genetic resource.
And this is actually, I think, may be important.
So this is from a basic paper from Science Direct. Next one over. There we go. Genetic reassortment. So this is what Dr. Pellick is talking about. You had it on the left. No, that's protein. That's it. So this is a description of what genetic reassortment is. And basically it is where two genetically different variants of the same virus. So I suppose you could almost say, like, two strains of COVID, or two strains of in this case, influenza, or avian influenza, where both of those viruses hit the person, animal, whatever, at exactly the same time. Both of the viruses go in and then combine to create this unique mix of two viruses. That has to happen at the same time. There are occasions where it has happened post-vaccination, and there are few occasions where they think it may have happened naturally. But it's hard to say. Now, we have a company with Dr. Tsukamoto, who was sending his students over to Canada, to this farm, to inject these birds. And some of the experiments he has been doing are with the reassortment, the recombinant combination of multiple strains of H5N1 to inject into ostriches. He has a history of that. There are papers published on him doing this work that would specifically create what the CFAA have found. So I have a question for the scientists out there. Which is more likely? That some ducks flew in and gave these birds, bear in mind that based on the testing that Dr. Pellick had done, they'd already all been exposed to H5N1 before this particular incident, because he tested frozen eggs that were 4 years old. So back in 2020, when they had the first, they said they died of Pseudomonas, but he's confirmed that they were definitely at some point exposed to H5N1. So did the first 10 in 2020 die of Pseudomonas, or did they die of H5N1 or some combination thereof? But basically, we now have in 2024, late in the season, where everything's frozen, outside of the normal migration timing of ducks, a flock of up to 500 ducks land in the property where there's no major body of water next to the ostriches, and infect them with two separate influenza viruses that recombine inside the cells of these ostriches and suddenly kill 69 of them, possibly more. Or could one of Dr. Sakamoto's students have been injecting them with the stuff that he's been creating himself, manufacturing it himself, using this mRNA recombinant protein manufacturing process, and it went wrong? I don't know which one is, but the Occam's razor in me, the most likely of the two scenarios, suggests that maybe this wasn't a natural die-off, in which case there are some serious questions to ask, even beyond the COVID-19. But the CFAA is not going to look into that, because all they've got is they come in, they test, and they have a standard operating procedure, which they do with all farms. Right now, they're just confused as hell as to why this is going this way. They want to come in and do their job. They can't because of the court filings. And the courts actually have quite a lot of power. It's amazing what things you would think they couldn't possibly not let that go forward can be halted just by filing a piece of paper into court. And things can be delayed, as is happening here. But in the meantime, are more birds dying? Like we've seen a lot more videos lately of the birds. Jim Kerr is posting lots and lots of these happy birds with the males and females mixing, and
which is also a violation of the quarantine order, I believe, because I think one of the conditions was they were supposed to separate the males from the females and prevent them from procreating. So they're not supposed to be letting them mate. And they've been posting videos of basically ostrich porn, they call it.
But in every single one of those videos, we see a very, very small number of birds. I haven't been able to see anywhere near. Yeah. Now, Jeff Gowdry came on the other day and said he'd counted them, and well, does that would mean that you probably breached the quarantine then, because the size of these pens is 58 acres for these birds to be on. I'm assuming you would have had to get pretty close. We've got Jim Kerr flying his drone over the top of them, again breaching the quarantine. It's like it goes on, and their argument for we're not following the quarantine is a technicality of we didn't get served properly, so we didn't know, except we did know because we told everyone on social media on the 12th of February. So here we are all this time. And had they filed and responded to CFAA, we haven't been served properly, then they would have been served again. But they behaved, if you actually look at social media, if you look at their response, if you look at their complaints of what they were having to do, they behaved in a manner that would suggest they were trying to comply with the quarantine, but weren't very successful in it. They weren't out and out saying, we don't have to do this and we're not going to do it, which is what you would have expected them to do if they were fighting back against the government. We don't have to do it because they didn't serve us properly. But that's not what you did. You actually gave the CFAA the impression that you were trying to, but were failing. And therefore you got the ticket. So it's again, it's a very disingenuous behavior to pretend that you're following the rules, you're trying to follow the rules, you're behaving in a manner that you should to keep everybody safe, because at the end of the day, again, totally contrary to what they're saying, we don't know what the birds died of because it was a PCR test. Stephen Pellick says, you know, this PCR test was a waste of time because they overcycled it. While he also knew during that conversation, which he admitted later in the conversation, that they'd been fully gene sequenced to find the answer, which made the PCR test moot. Whether it was overcycled or not, that result was irrelevant to the fact that they had proven the birds had this very unique genetic assortment of two separate, a high pathogen, low pathogen. Now, I'm going to throw up a hypothetical. I have no evidence of this, but it's a hypothetical I'd like maybe a scientist to step in on. I'm going to talk to, as I would as an investigator, where I would go looking for some facts right now. And that is, I see a farm that when COVID hit, a farm that was in trouble, in some of their pleadings, in actually the court pleading, they say they stopped selling the birds for meat in the summer of 2019, before COVID even hit, which is strange because they say they were still selling it all the way through COVID. But anyway, and all the way through their research. But they say they were stopped selling it early. We know they were in financial trouble and there were multiple lawsuits ongoing. Then COVID hit, and they clearly, by their own admission, saw an opportunity to make money out of COVID. If they could get ahead of it and make glowing masks and nasal sprays and lozenges and do experiments on the farm, they were going to be rich. And that obviously didn't pan out on the COVID side. That doesn't mean they didn't continue that research, but there doesn't seem to be any commercialization that has occurred out of that. Same with Dr. Sakamoto, other than he sold 1 million masks. But I don't see any other products coming out of his situation. Then bear in mind that these ostriches didn't die at the very beginning of avian flu hitting Canada. It hit Canada. We've had millions and millions of birds culled. We've had thousands of farms impacted, and nobody said a word. Nobody stood up for them. This farm didn't stand up for them. The freedom movement didn't stand up for anyone. And this farm suddenly hits the news. Is it possible, as a hypothetical, that Dr. Sakamoto said, hey guys, we're doing this business. We're setting up this deal with Struthio Bio starting April 2024. I'm going to send some people over and we're going to cure avian flu. And we know it's devastating Canada right now. This time we're going to be ahead of the game, not late to the game. And we're going to cure avian flu. So they come in, they inject the birds, and suddenly the birds drop dead. Is that the reason they didn't report it? Is that the reason they just went out and buried them? Because I'd go in a bit of a panic. And if I was one of the major investors from around the world that was investing in this company, I wouldn't, because I'm not that sort of, my ethics could go beyond that. But I can understand why somebody would want this to go away. But then somebody calls the CFAA and they turn up, and then other people get wind of it. And then we've got a list of what I would call the usual suspects. People connected throughout the last 5 years to just about everything. The amount of experts, lawyers, and political activist leaders that have effectively controlled the official opposition narrative, shall we call it, for the last 5 years is a very small group. And if you want to know who those players are, I'd suggest looking at two things: the injection of truth events, which are part of the UCP in Alberta and now the APP, the Alberta Prosperity Project, which used to be the Alberta Prosperity Party, which is part of the sovereignty movement. And the other thing is We Unify, which is, there's been 4 sets of We Unify conferences. And Dr. Pellick has been there, Umar Sheikh's been there, Peter McCulloch's been there, everybody who's anybody significant and connected to this farm, significant and connected to Dr. Hoffey's situation, to Sheila Annette Lewis's situation, to the Ingram case here in Alberta, to the court cases that are ongoing, the travel mandate cases. They've all been together at these conferences. They all seem to keep turning up at the same time. And then things happen out of them. They are all connected. And I know that for a fact because I've participated in conferences and communications backwards and forward with Dr. Pellick's organization. They actually asked me to participate, just like Lee Turner asked me to be an expert witness in the Charles Hoffey case. I was asked to help out by Eva Chipiuk and the head of the CCCA, who also is the head of John Weston's legal company, the CCCF, or the new version of that, which actually connects into the JCCF, which are all the lawyers that are, if anybody in the freedom movement will probably recognize every one of these names, and even people outside of it will probably recognize some of these names because they've been controversial. Like the JCCF hired a private investigator to follow a judge in Manitoba. How he stayed out of jail after doing that, I do not know. That's beyond contempt of court. But anyway, they were banned from practicing law for a year, and they're all connected. And they all seem to pop up out of nowhere. What were the chances of this farm, doing all its COVID research, sort of the exact opposite of what all these people were involved in, that they would all come as expert witnesses and expert lawyers would come to rescue a farm that was effectively setting itself up to be a big pharma competitor in that space. And the each set of filings we show a farm that was in financial trouble that needed something to help it, which creates an opportunity. We've got what I would, no disrespect to him, but based on the descriptions of somebody who actually takes the genetic sequence on paper published by the Chinese government, uses CRISPR technology to create a synthetic virus and then inject themselves with it, is potentially not playing with a full deck in Mike. I mean, that's mad professor type territory. And that's the person they're in bed with. That's the person who's currently sending scientists over and students over from a foreign government to inject birds. And all the hens, every single one of them. There he is, yeah. And,
this is Dr. Tsukamoto injecting himself with this synthetically produced, artificially produced version of the COVID antigen that he has been providing to the Universal Ostrich Farm, and that he's been using himself to inject into the ostriches, and injecting himself with it. Here. I have to say, David, when we showed this the other night and Dr. Pellick laughed as though it was no big deal, I was shocked.
Well, Dr. Pellick sort of doubled down on that in his conversation, because he didn't just say that, laugh at this. He went on to say, we said, well, these birds have been injected with pathogens. They're not pathogens, he said, they're safe. Okay, well, if you were, I asked him, if you were doing this sort of work with these same materials to lab animals at the university, what would happen at the end of the experiment to those lab animals? He said, we'd euthanize them and incinerate them. okay. I said, so that's your view is if these ostriches were at the university, they wouldn't be culled humanely as the CFAA wants to do. They would be euthanized and incinerated. And I said, so are you okay with the fact that they've been put into the food system? And he said, well, I wouldn't eat them, but that's because he's a vegetarian, not because he doesn't think. He said, it's safe. I said, but if it's safe, why does your university euthanize and incinerate these animals? Oh, no, it's safe. I said, okay, well, what about if they injected them with the COVID virus, which is classed as a level 3 pathogen requiring level 3 bio-level handling, or any other pathogen, any other highly contagious virus like Ebola, we were talking about MRSA and anything.
Which in a video, they actually say the birds had been inoculated against as well. In one of the videos produced for the farm as part of their information campaign, they're saying that they've done this. But Dr. Pellick is saying they didn't, and there seems to be some confusion. It's conflicting information, but again, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, so he was asked, well, if they'd been injected, let's just say it's not the non-infectious, but it's a highly infectious, highly pathogenic virus that they've been injected with. Do you think that they should be allowed the eggs and feathers and everything else to breach quarantine and go into the general food system, even the waste of the birds for people to put on their garden? And he said, well, as long as they haven't died within a month, yeah, that's not a problem at all. Now, that's actually basically giving people permission as a tenured professor to go inject their farm animals with any pathogen they want and continue selling them. As long as they don't drop dead immediately, we're good. I know there are laws against that in this country. And for a tenured professor who's currently the expert witness for this farm and was the expert witness telling everybody with his, at that point in time, incomplete trial of that his technology, saying he had definite proof the ostriches had antibodies, but then was complaining that the CFAA hadn't done their job because they overcycled the PCR, and then admitted, but they did full genetic sequencing more than he did. He's actually saying to people, let's basically, instead of killing, basically ending the experiments, which I don't agree with the experiments in the first place on animals, but instead of ending the experiments and destroying the potential risk, like everybody talks about the lab leak from Wuhan, something got out of the lab. What he's suggesting is that the Wuhan lab should be the primary supplier of meat for the Wuhan wet markets. That's the equivalent of what he's saying. It's like, so in which case we wouldn't have to worry about which one it came from, because it effectively would come from both.
Well, listen, let's take a little break. We're going to come back and we'll kind of recap all this, just to tie things up, make things make sense to people, because we've covered a lot of ground, and we'll do all of that on the other side of this. Hang on.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so let me maybe take the lead on the summary here, and then you tell me if I'm basically on track with where all this information has taken us tonight. We have a new appeal, and the court documents now today basically coming to the surface so that we can see behind the curtain more. And we're seeing that the ownership of the farm still very much in question. A strange relationship between the lawyer and the farm owners, who are now saying that their lawyer was incompetent and may have had a conflict of financial interest because he could have benefited by having the birds destroyed. So they didn't get the outcome that they were hoping for in court, even though the lawyer was able to get a very rare stay, delaying the cull of the ostriches to begin with, although ultimately the challenge was thrown out. So now they're appealing. I guess they must have a new lawyer who's filed this new paperwork. And so that's all ongoing, while we're also seeing that, I think because of concerns overall about what's really going on at the farm, the number of protesters has dropped off. So I've shown tonight that we have the social media influencers who are out there begging and pleading for people to come back to the farm to get the protest kind of ramped up again, saying that, they need to, the more people they have, that the more success they'll have in keeping the Canadian Food Inspection Agency away and preventing them from killing these ostriches, which they're still trying to save. While this more information comes out, we're now seeing also concerns about, or more information coming out about the history of the research there, which has revealed that the CFIA has confirmed that the specific virus that was present in the birds, confirmed because of additional testing, not just a straight PCR test, but they were able to identify the specific strain, which killed a poultry worker in Ohio because it did transfer to humans, as some sort of a mutated version of two combined viruses, two strains of the bird flu virus. And it's very weird that they would get that from ducks, especially in that geographic region on the other side of the continent. And the other weird thing about it is, when you go back, and I showed this a few nights ago, Dr. Tsukamoto, who they were working with at the university in Japan, was actually doing research into doing just that, combining two different bird flu viruses in a laboratory. And then we've seen, just in the last couple of nights, email messages through these documents that are coming out showing that the university in Japan was sending students over to Canada, bringing with them, not sending them through the mail, but bringing with them materials that were being injected either by themselves, or they were providing them to people at the farm to inject into the birds. What those specific materials were, we're not entirely sure, but it's some sort of either antigen or something related to all this research that they're doing, but we're not even sure what exactly they were bringing over, which is pretty alarming given all the weird stuff that's gone on with COVID and the pandemic and the outbreak. And so tonight, I guess there's just more ongoing weirdness and concerns related to all this, while the social media influencers are still saying, get on down here with your families, just come by yourself, just get on down here, bring your kids, jump on the bouncy castles, participate in a protest at this farm that is still under a quarantine order, that has been fined for not complying with the quarantine orders and for failing to report the initial outbreak back in December, which killed 69 birds, which have been buried on site. And we can't even account for all the birds that are supposed to be still alive, and they're claiming that all the birds are supposed to be healthy. and that they haven't had any additional birds die. And yet, well, I don't even know where all the birds are. And they can't even account for all the birds. And this is supposed to be a research facility where you would think they would keep meticulous records of everything that they're doing. They should have the birds tagged, numbered, not just, names like Sarah and John, and walk up and try and guess which of the, however many hundreds or tens or whatever. They couldn't do it when I watched them on video. They weren't sure what the names of these birds were. So they should have them tagged, numbered, itemized, comprehensive records, and they don't have any of these kinds of documents. Am I basically on track? Because seems to be the newest information that has come out. Have I missed anything tonight?
Yeah, the only thing I can confirm, they do have a new lawyer. It's Umar Sheikh, who was Sheila Annette Lewis's lawyer, where Stephen Pellick, with his Connexus company, that has a definitive stake in testing antibodies. So I would have thought he would definitely have a conflict of interest in this case as an expert, whether the lawyer did or not, because his business is making money from testing for these types of antibodies. And in fact, in this case, he says he didn't charge, but and maybe he didn't charge when he did it for Sheila Annette Lewis, but Connexus was the company that produced the expert report on the antibody testing, and that case was ended up in the hands of Umar Sheikh, the lawyer who's now working for the farm. I'm sure it's just purely a coincidence, just like all these people talking at the Injection of Truth and working with the sovereign movement and everything having the word sovereign in it. I mean, they're talking about, everybody who's at the farm is talking about their sovereign rights and their sovereign this. And Alberta wants to be a sovereign nation in Canada. It's funny, they want to be a sovereign nation in Canada. Okay, that doesn't make you a sovereign nation. And they want to be a sovereign nation by joining the US, which just makes you a state instead of a province. We don't want the Canadian dollar. We want our own US dollar. Okay. I wonder, I mean, maybe these people have been smoking ostrich eggs. I don't know. But yeah, the everything you said there, and there is more. There's actually a lot more even at this point with the connections. But as far as an update for the farm, we know that they basically filed a particular reason, basically blaming their previous lawyer, and they're now adding in details that are not, they shouldn't be making people feel more comfortable. People should be feeling less comfortable and wanting more questions answered, because they are confirming in court records now, not just a posted copy of an email on their PR campaign, but they're confirming in their documentation everything about injecting the birds, injecting all the hens, working with this Dr. Tsukamoto and the Kyoto Prefecture University in the frankly terrifying experiments that he's been performing. Hopefully he's not doing it in some open air farm, and he's doing it in a more controlled environment. But as you said, I also do not know what the biohazard requirements are in Japan. I do know what they are here in Canada, and from everything I've heard, and even with the recombinant safe proteins, when it came to COVID, the government, and people say, well, what about all those test kits? All those test kits, they've got the recombinant proteins. No, they don't. They actually have antibodies in them. So the COVID test kits don't have any antibodies in them at all. Antigens in them, because they test for antigens by binding them with genetically modified antibodies in the test kits. The test kits are not infectious. You couldn't extract them from them, which is strange as to why Dr. Pellick would say, go and get them, when he should know that the lateral flow PCR, lateral flow rat test, rapid antigen test, it's actually called a rapid antigen test because it tests for antigens with antibodies. Strange.
And so, anyway. And I think that the real information is slowly starting to get out, including information about the U.S. connections to this, and Dr. Oz offering to take the ostriches to Florida, which I say take them, okay, just get them out of here so I don't have to deal with this anymore. And RFK Jr. intervening, and we're seeing now some attention from U.S. media being paid to this. Where did my clip go? So, oh my, I gotta find the right section here. Okay, so this is an article on MSN, and they're keying in on this, and they are saying that, well, actually, I'm sorry, I've got so many tabs open, I have to find the right one. There it is right there, so I can read this. Okay. So this article is now, at least some other scientists are taking note of this. Media is taking note of this. And this is Dr. Angela Rasmussen, a virologist at the University of Saskatchewan, who is now expressing concerns about what's going on at the farm, which I'm grateful that somebody else is at least looking at this. And she is obviously coming down on the side of caution and saying this is actually a dangerous situation. Says showing no awareness that Canada is a sovereign nation with laws, treaty obligations, and a justice system. RFK Jr. tried to browbeat the head of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency into sparing the birds because, quote, my fans love ostriches and hate the government, isn't a persuasive argument. And Kennedy insinuated that Universal Ostrich is actually an elite biomedical research outfit probing the mysteries of bird flu. The birds should be spared, he argued, because the flock is in a controlled environment where it can be studied. But as court records have shown, they paint a picture of a decidedly uncontrolled environment. In fact, I would say it is not controlled at all, and that is very obvious just from looking. On an ordinary farm with lax biosecurity, I would say virtually no biosecurity. The owners have produced no evidence to CFIA that any valid research is taking place on the premises, and in the agency's opinion, the current physical facilities, this is right from the CFIA documents, the current physical facilities at their location are not suitable for controlled research activities or trials. And I would also just add, if I just to wrap, the reason they're saying there's no actual research being done there, I would say, is not because they weren't injecting the birds, but because it was not being done properly. So the research is not valid. That's not to say that I think that that's a possible misinterpretation of what the CFIA has been saying here. It's not that these birds have not been injected, that this stuff hasn't been done. It's that it hasn't been done in a valid way using valid methodology. So it's all useless.
Yep. And I mean, they have said themselves in their defense of the quarantine for bird flu that they wouldn't even follow the quarantine requirements for bird flu, let alone the quarantine requirements for all these other things they've been experimenting with. So, again, it's probably the worst defense they've got is their own words and actions.
Yes.
The best evidence that against them is their own words and actions.
Yes. They've, in fact, every time I turn around, they're just confirming everything that we're sharing with people, but then they just flip it and say that they have to save the ostriches because they're going to save humanity from bird flu.
And make them a lot of money.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, is if they win this, somehow, if the farm prevails and the birds are spared, and on the premise that there has to be ongoing research, it sets everything up so that they'll be receiving millions of dollars in government research grants. So it's an all or nothing situation on our hands here. They're either going to lose everything or they're going to come out with a huge windfall where they're going to get research grants, keep the place running. They're going to continue to inject the birds, use them as lab animals, and everybody sails off to the bank.
And that's it. I mean, basically, I asked the question when I first got involved, what are you saving the ostriches from and for? They were, prior to 2020, and had COVID not happened, they would still be executing these birds routinely themselves and taking their eggs away from them and treating them as farm animals with no real care other than the fact that they're supposed to keep them healthy and because it helps with their production, but with no care about whether they lived or died, well, as long as they died as part of the profit engine. So that was where they were, and where they've moved into is to turn them into lab animals to be experimented on. So now we've got, effectively, the freedom movement has become the anti-PETA movement. The save the lab animals by continuing to experiment on them. Right. They're not going in and breaking these ostriches out the cages and setting them free. They're saying keep them in the cages and keep injecting them. That's literally what the freedom movement is fighting for.
That is exactly right. So it's like, and people need to understand this. They keep calling them pets. They are not pets. They are livestock, and it turned into now lab animals. And if they save these ostriches, you are condemning them to an existence for the rest of their days as lab animals to be injected and experimented on in whatever facility ends up being preserved there. This is so bizarre. But that's where we're at.
But remember to donate.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Save the ostriches.
David Dixon, thank you so much, sir, for coming on and helping us make sense of this again tonight. This story continues to evolve, and I know that you're going to be back sooner rather than later, because there will be more on this as we continue to dig into it. And folks, stay with me, because I do want to share a little bit more with you tonight about what's going on, not only in LA, but also Chicago. So I'll return on the other side of this. And thank you again, David, for joining us on the program tonight.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
This is not live, but it happened just minutes ago. So I'm going to bring this to you. I'm going to cue this for you. This is Gavin Newsom at okay, we're going to go. He's doing this. Here we go.
Women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. It will keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? I ask everyone, take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday, he's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state. This is about all of us. This is about all of us. California may be first. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other democracy are next. Is democracy. Democracy is under democracy is before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. Co-equal branches of government. Independent. There are no longer any checks and balances. No longer any checks and balances. Nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson found as Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has given way to the rule of founding fathers. They didn't live. Founding fathers. They didn't live. See this kind of moment. See this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, in a democracy, said it best. The most important office, the most due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, is not certainly not governor, and it's certainly not governor. Office is the most important office is office of citizen. At this moment.
All right, as you see there, it appears that the audio there from the source still not clean at this point. We've been trying to bring you this message that California Governor Gavin Newsom was delivering there amid these LA protests. So that's not something that's happening here on our side in our newsroom. It's it's just
echo. All right, let's go to Chicago because these protests have spread across the country. This is live out of Chicago. One moment while I get to see if I can get that Newsom feedback. And yeah, marches, curfews tonight, I believe, as well. Has been put in place in LA. Okay, let's go back to Newsom. Bring this up. I think I've got them here because we've got so many tabs open tonight. Here we go. Okay, we've got it. Bring it to you.
When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived.
Once again, the governor of California taking to task the president of the United States, not just over the issues as to whether or not the National Guard was properly federalized and taken away from the authority of the governor or local officials, but to a much larger degree, whether this is a national initiative on part of the president. The governor saying that other governors and states across the country, beware, you're next. And again, extraordinary remarks coming out of the state building downtown from Governor Gavin Newsom. Back to you.
You know, Conan, the other thing
Okay. So very volatile. A country divided tonight. Still. Canada, take note. This is really unprecedented and dangerous. And thank you to David Dixon for again joining us on the program. I hope you guys got something of value out of that tonight. The court filings coming out today. The appeal from that ostrich farm in Edgewood, BC. Moving forward now, delaying further. The ostrich call at Edgewood at the Universal Ostrich Farms facility, research facility in Edgewood, British Columbia, which is not really just about the birds. It really is a challenge, an affront to the government. Concerns tonight that it may escalate into something more serious. It all depends on how successful the protest is, how successful the challenge is in the courts, which has now delayed that call for approximately 6 months. How much longer will it go on? I don't know, but we have a lot more information to share with you on that front in the days ahead. So stick with us right here, because we're bringing information to you that you are simply not getting anywhere else. And we'll continue to do that as we do our best to bring you closer to the truth. One last thing tonight. Let me see if I can find this. This is serious and it's kind of funny at the same time. Let me just close off with this tonight. And this will tee up our song to close off the broadcast. Here is still out in British Columbia, on the western side of Canada, Canuckistan, BC professor given prestigious award for tireless efforts protecting Borneo's orangutans. There's Dr. Barute Mary Galidicas. I don't know who this is, but the good doctor has received some sort of a prize. She remembers the first time she laid eyes upon an orangutan. It says it wasn't in the flesh, but via a photograph, one of the subadult male Sumatran captured peering straight down the barrel of the camera, yet it stirred something within. It was the eyes, she recalls, from the upper lip up when you looked at him, kind of like looking at Trump. It was like you were looking at a human being. Yeah, kind of like the president. That's what intrigued me, she says. The eyes of an orangutan are mesmerizing. Few people feel compelled to dedicate their life to caring for an entire species after merely looking upon a photograph. But going against the grain is typical for 79-year-old Galdikas. an iconic explorers award. In April, the Simon Fraser University professor, scientist, and conservationist was bestowed a prestigious award for her unprecedented work researching and protecting orangutans in the dense rainforests of Borneo. Dedicated to the field of research and scientific exploration, the Explorers Club Medal for Explorer of the Year is widely regarded as the highest honor of its kind. Past recipients include the likes of Neil Armstrong. I actually met him. James Cameron and Jane Goodall. I met him at a comic convention. I was actually surprised, she says. I never thought I would be nominated for it or that I would get it, says the Lithuanian-born, Canadian-raised Galdikas, describing how she is well-versed on the club's array of awards but had never envisioned taking one home, let alone the highest honor. So congratulations, Doctor. Oh, in an attempt to explain the momentousness of the occasion, Galdikas references a comment Cameron once made about his Explorers Club nod meaning more to him than winning an Oscar. Galdikas's collection of awards is equally as impressive. They include both an Order of Canada and, oh, isn't this interesting, given what we've been talking about tonight, the Ostrich research birds, and a PETA Humanitarian Award. And yet, much like Cameron, she considers her latest trophy to be in a league of its own. Well, congratulations to the doctor. Going to bat for those orangutans. And with that, I'll leave you with Maverick and the News Brothers and the orange orangutan. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
Monkey see, monkey do. Vladimir Putin's making a fool out of you. Once a deal maker, now just a shouter. Used to shake hands, now it's all about power. You turn your back on your friends and your allies too. You betrayed the spirit of the red, white, and blue. Oh, orange orangutan man, swinging through the world with a heavy hand. Tearing up treaties, slapping on tariffs, throwing tantrums like a billionaire sheriff. Tell it down, don't stop it, man, you beast, you critter. Orange orangutan man. Donald Trump 1.0 had a plan. Now Donald J. Trump 2.0's a wrecking man. Used to make deals, now you just sneer. Ruling through fear, grinning ear to ear. Canada's not for sale, Greenland ain't yours. Gaza's not a playground, quit making wars. Bluffing and puffing with the wig on tight. Acting like a boss, but you lost the fight. The art of the deal, man, that ship sunk. Now it's all about rage and a nuclear funk. Orange orangutan man, swinging through the world with a heavy hand. Tearing up treaties, slapping on tariffs, throwing tantrums like a billionaire sheriff. Dial it down, don't stop it, man, you beast, you critter. Orange orangutan man. You're fired. No, you're just bananas.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.